The Great Pasta Caper, in the quaint little town of Spaghettiville, where the streets were paved with rigatoni and the lampposts were shaped like giant meatballs, lived a quirky inventor named Noodlehead Nick. Nick was famous for two things: his wild, curly hair that looked suspiciously like fusilli pasta, and his outlandish inventions, which were often more amusing than useful. One sunny afternoon, as the townsfolk were enjoying their siesta, Nick burst out of his house with a triumphant shout. He had just completed his latest invention, the Spaghetti Shooter 3000. This remarkable contraption could cook and shoot perfectly al dente spaghetti noodles at incredible speeds. Nick was convinced that it would revolutionize the way people ate pasta, turning every meal into an action-packed adventure. To demonstrate his invention, Nick invited the entire town to the central piazza. The curious citizens gathered around, whispering and giggling, eager to see what sort of chaos Nick would unleash this time. Nick, with a proud grin, cranked up the Spaghetti Shooter 3000 and took aim at the giant tomato sauce fountain in the middle of the square. With a loud whoosh, the machine fired a torrent of steaming spaghetti straight into the fountain. The pasta hit the tomato sauce with a splash, sending red droplets flying in all directions. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, delighted by the unexpected spectacle. But then, something unusual happened. The Spaghetti Shooter 3000 began to sputter and shake. Before Nick could react, the machine went haywire, spewing spaghetti in every direction. Noodles flew through the air, landing on rooftops, wrapping around lampposts, and draping over the heads of the bewildered townsfolk. Nick tried to regain control of his invention, but it was no use. The Spaghetti Shooter 3000 had a mind of its own. It chased after people, firing spaghetti like a culinary cannon, turning Spaghettiville into a giant, saucy mess. Mayor Macaroni, a portly man with a passion for pasta, was not amused. Covered in spaghetti and tomato sauce, he bellowed, "Nick, you've turned our town into a giant plate of spaghetti. This madness must stop." Nick, still struggling with his contraption, finally managed to pull the plug. The Spaghetti Shooter 3000 sputtered one last time before falling silent. The town square was a sight to behold, with noodles hanging from trees and sauce splattered everywhere. Despite the chaos, the townsfolk couldn't help but laugh. Even Mayor Macaroni eventually cracked a smile. "Well, Nick," he said, wiping sauce from his face, "you've certainly made this a day to remember." Nick sheepishly grinned. "I guess I need to work out a few kinks. But hey, at least nobody will go hungry tonight." And so, the townspeople of Spaghettiville spent the rest of the day cleaning up and sharing a spontaneous pasta feast. Nick's Spaghetti Shooter 3000 might not have been the revolutionary invention he hoped for, but it certainly brought the town together in a way that no one would ever forget. The lasagna liftoff. After the hilarious debacle with the Spaghetti Shooter 3000, Noodlehead Nick was undeterred. He was already cooking up his next big idea, the lasagna liftoff. Nick was convinced that this invention would put Spaghettiville on the map and make him a legendary inventor. The concept was simple yet ambitious. Nick wanted to create a lasagna so large and so magnificent that it could be launched into space. He believed that by sending his signature dish into orbit, he would not only make culinary history, but also inspire generations of pasta enthusiasts. Nick worked tirelessly in his workshop, which was now littered with the remnants of his previous inventions. There were pasta gears, sauce pistons, and noodle springs scattered everywhere. But amidst the chaos, a colossal lasagna was taking shape. It was layered with rich, meaty ragu, creamy bechamel, and sheets of perfectly cooked pasta, all topped with a golden layer of melted cheese. The townsfolk, still recovering from the Spaghetti Shooter incident, watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. They couldn't fathom how Nick intended to launch a lasagna into space, but they were eager to see what would happen. On the day of the grand launch, the entire town gathered at the Spaghettiville spaceport, which was really just the old soccer field with a makeshift launch pad. The giant lasagna was mounted on a towering rocket, which Nick had ingeniously crafted from recycled pasta boxes and tomato sauce cans. Mayor Macaroni, now a cautious supporter of Nick's antics, gave a brief speech. "Citizens of Spaghettiville, today we witness a historic event. Let us hope that this endeavor is more successful and less messy than the last." With that, Nick initiated the countdown. The crowd joined in, their voices filled with anticipation. 3, 2, 1, lift off. The rocket's engines roared to life, spewing plumes of garlic-scented smoke. The ground trembled as the giant lasagna began to ascend. Slowly, but surely, it rose higher and higher into the sky. The townsfolk cheered, their faces lit with awe and delight. But then, as the lasagna reached the upper atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The intense heat of the rocket engines began to bake the lasagna even further. The cheese bubbled and browned, the edges crisped, and the delicious aroma wafted down to the onlookers below. Suddenly, with a loud pop, the lasagna expanded. The top layer of cheese formed a giant, crispy dome, and the rocket's structural integrity was compromised. Before anyone could react, the lasagna burst, sending a shower of gooey, cheesy, saucy goodness raining down on Spaghettiville. The townspeople scattered, trying to dodge the falling lasagna, but it was no use. In moments, the entire town was covered in a thick layer of lasagna. People slipped and slid on the cheesy surface, laughing and shouting as they tried to navigate the mess. Nick, standing on the launch pad, looked around at the chaos with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. Mayor Macaroni, once again drenched in sauce, approached him with a bemused expression. "Nick," he said, shaking his head, "only you could turn a space mission into an impromptu pasta party." Nick chuckled, wiping cheese from his face. "Well, Mayor, I suppose we can say the lasagna liftoff was a success, in its own way." Despite the mess, the townsfolk couldn't deny that Nick's latest invention had brought them together once again. They spent the rest of the day cleaning up and sharing the unexpected feast, laughing and recounting the hilarious spectacle. From that day on, Spaghettiville embraced Nick's eccentric inventions, knowing that while they might not always go as planned, they would always result in unforgettable adventures and a good meal. And Nick, ever the optimist, continued to dream up new ways to combine his love of pasta with his boundless imagination, much to the delight and occasional dismay of his fellow townsfolk. The ravioli ruckus. Spaghettiville was once again buzzing with excitement. After the legendary lasagna liftoff, Noodlehead Nick had become something of a local hero. His wild inventions, though often messy, brought joy and a sense of camaraderie to the townspeople. This time, Nick was determined to create something that combined both practicality and entertainment. His new project, the Ravioli Rumbler. Nick's idea was to design a machine that could produce an endless stream of ravioli, each piece perfectly cooked and filled with a variety of delicious fillings. The Ravioli Rumbler would revolutionize the way Spaghettiville dined, providing an endless supply of the town's favorite pasta pockets. For weeks, Nick tinkered away in his workshop. He experimented with different mechanisms to ensure the ravioli were uniformly filled and cooked to perfection. He even designed a special conveyor belt that would serve the ravioli directly to diners. The townspeople were intrigued and couldn't wait to see the grand unveiling. Finally, the day arrived. Nick set up the Ravioli Rumbler in the town square, which had been adorned with festive decorations and a large banner that read, "Ravioli Ruckus Day." The entire town turned out for the event, eager to taste the culinary marvel Nick had promised. Mayor Macaroni, now a seasoned veteran of Nick's escapades, took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today we witness the unveiling of the Ravioli Rumbler. May it bring us joy, laughter, and of course, delicious ravioli." Nick, wearing his signature chef's hat and a broad grin, stepped forward and activated the machine. The Ravioli Rumbler roared to life with a series of whirs and clanks. Dough was rolled out, fillings were expertly piped, and ravioli were cut and sealed with precision. At first, everything seemed to be going perfectly. The conveyor belt hummed as it delivered steaming plates of ravioli to the waiting crowd. The townspeople eagerly dug in, savoring the rich flavors of spinach and ricotta, mushroom and truffle, and classic meat fillings. But then, as more and more ravioli were produced, the machine began to speed up. What started as a steady stream of pasta pockets soon turned into an avalanche. Plates overflowed, tables were buried under mountains of ravioli, and the conveyor belt showed no signs of slowing down. Nick frantically tried to adjust the settings, but the Ravioli Rumbler was out of control. It seemed to have developed a mind of its own, churning out ravioli at an alarming rate. The townspeople, initially delighted, now found themselves dodging flying pasta as the machine spat out ravioli in every direction. Mayor Macaroni, struggling to keep his composure, shouted, "Nick, do something! We're being overrun by ravioli!" Nick, covered in flour and ricotta, desperately pulled levers and pressed buttons, but the machine only seemed to increase its pace. The town square was quickly becoming a ravioli war zone, with pasta piling up and sauce splattering everywhere. Just when it seemed that Spaghettiville would be buried under a sea of ravioli, Nick had a brilliant idea. He grabbed a large pot and held it under the output chute of the ravioli rumbler. The pot filled rapidly, but it bought Nick enough time to locate the emergency shut-off switch. With a triumphant yell, Nick flipped the switch, and the ravioli rumbler ground to a halt. The town square fell silent, save for the occasional plop of a stray ravioli landing in a puddle of sauce. The townsfolk, covered in pasta and sauce, burst into laughter. Mayor Macaroni, holding a ravioli in each hand, shook his head with a smile. "Well, Nick, you've done it again. Another unforgettable day in Spaghettiville." Nick, wiping sauce from his face, grinned sheepishly. "I guess I need to work on the speed settings. But hey, at least we won't run out of ravioli for a while." The townspeople, ever good-natured, helped clean up the mess and salvaged as much ravioli as they could. That night, they held an impromptu ravioli feast, celebrating their latest adventure and the ingenuity of their beloved Noodlehead Nick. From that day on, Spaghettiville embraced the unpredictable nature of Nick's inventions, knowing that they would always lead to delicious food and a great story to tell. And Nick, ever the inventor, continued to dream up new ways to bring joy and laughter to his quirky little town. The fettuccine fiasco in Spaghettiville, where pasta was the lifeblood and sauce flowed like rivers, Noodlehead Nick had become an integral part of the community. His inventive spirit kept the townspeople entertained and well-fed, even if his contraptions sometimes led to unexpected chaos. This time, Nick had devised a plan to address a very pressing issue: transportation. Tired of the slow, noodle-drawn carts and the occasional pile-ups at the Rotini roundabout, Nick set out to create the Fettuccine Flyer, a revolutionary transportation system that promised to whisk citizens around town at lightning speed using airborne pasta strands. Nick's vision was simple yet ambitious. He planned to suspend thick, durable fettuccine strands across Spaghettiville, allowing people to zip from one place to another using specially designed harnesses and carriages. The fettuccine would be reinforced with a secret blend of herbs and spices to ensure strength and flexibility. For weeks, Nick worked on the Fettuccine Flyer in his workshop, experimenting with different pasta recipes and suspension techniques. The townsfolk were both excited and apprehensive, eager to see if this new invention would revolutionize their commutes or end in another hilariously messy spectacle. On the day of the grand unveiling, the town square was buzzing with anticipation. Nick had set up several stations around Spaghettiville, with fettuccine lines crisscrossing the sky like a giant web. The harnesses and carriages were ready, adorned with bright colors and quirky decorations. Mayor Macaroni, now a seasoned veteran of Nick's escapades, took the stage with a smile. "Citizens of Spaghettiville, today we witness the dawn of a new era in transportation. Let us hope that the Fettuccine Flyer will bring us speed, convenience, and plenty of laughs." Nick, looking both proud and a bit nervous, activated the Fettuccine Flyer. The machinery hummed to life, and the fettuccine lines tightened, stretching taut across the town. The first brave volunteer, a young girl named Penelope, strapped herself into a harness and gave a thumbs up. With a whir and a click, Penelope was whisked off the ground, zipping along the fettuccine line with surprising speed. The crowd gasped and then cheered as she flew gracefully above their heads, landing smoothly at the next station. Encouraged by Penelope's success, more townspeople lined up to try the Fettuccine Flyer. For a while, it seemed like Nick's invention was a roaring success. People zipped from one end of town to the other, laughing and cheering as they soared through the air. But as more and more people took to the skies, the fettuccine strands began to show signs of strain. Despite Nick's best efforts, the reinforced pasta couldn't handle the constant load. Cracks appeared in the lines, and the sauce used as lubrication started to dry up, causing unexpected friction. Soon, disaster struck. As a particularly heavy-set gentleman named Alfredo was halfway across the town square, the fettuccine strand snapped with a loud twang. Alfredo plummeted into a fountain of marinara sauce, creating a splash that soaked everyone within a 10-foot radius. The crowd erupted in laughter and panic as more lines began to give way. People found themselves dangling precariously or crashing into pasta-filled fountains. Nick rushed to shut down the system, but the chaos had already spread. The town square was a scene of delicious pandemonium, with sauce-splattered citizens trying to untangle themselves from broken pasta strands. Mayor Macaroni, drenched in marinara and clutching a broken fettuccine strand, approached Nick with a bemused expression. "Nick, it seems your fettuccine flyer has turned into a fettuccine fiasco." Nick, covered in sauce and bits of pasta, managed a sheepish grin. "I suppose I underestimated the tensile strength of fettuccine. But look on the bright side, at least we've all had a bit of fun." Despite the mess, the townsfolk couldn't help but laugh. They spent the rest of the day cleaning up and enjoying an impromptu pasta party, turning the disaster into a memorable community event. Nick, ever the optimist, vowed to improve his designs and try again. From that day on, Spaghettiville embraced Nick's adventurous spirit, knowing that his inventions, while sometimes flawed, always brought excitement and a sense of togetherness. And Nick, undeterred by setbacks, continued to dream up new ways to make life in Spaghettiville as flavorful and fun as possible.